this morning in the pouring.
Welcome back, folks.
Underneath the trestle of a northbound train. Gotta get back home.
Very, very special guest tonight. My guest is Dan from EducatoriumEuphorium, the YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe to his channel. He puts out some fantastic videos on subject matters ranging from socialism to Ron Paul. You name it, he talks about it. And, okay, so Ron Paul. Let's talk about Ron Paul a little bit, Dan. What's your thoughts on Ron Paul?
Well, I think something that's great about Ron Paul is that he's very, because a lot of people now, even people who really don't have credibility to do so, will talk, they'll talk against, welfare for individuals, poor people. And although that's a problem, and there's many problems with welfare, a lot of times they'll totally ignore the more important and much more detrimental side of corporate welfare, which is just as corrupting and just as corrupt as individual welfare. Mm-hmm. And so what's great about Ron Paul is that he'll say, well, we got to look at both sides. And he believes in that founding principle of equal treatment before the law. And that means that if you're going to pay one American for not raising pigs, you're going to have to pay all Americans for not raising pigs.
Would you say his views on regulation is sound, i.e. he wants to cut out Department of Education, Department of Energy, Department of the EPA, all this kind of stuff? Because and his views are, let the courts deal with that. Free markets should be able to regulate themselves in a lot of cases. And if you have problems or disputes between, say, two states or, two companies or whatever, then the courts can go and take care of that. Do you feel as if his views are utopian, or do you feel that there is that they can be realistically achieved?
Yeah, I think only utopia. Utopian is more probably the thing that be applied to progressivism, where you think that the government, and if you read some words of environmentalists, you'll think they can organize society. That's much more utopian. But the utopian thing would be just to believe probably that government, we can just wake up tomorrow and have government disappear, because so many people have reoriented their lives around, subsidies or whatnot. You're going to have to phase it out. But no, it's not. I don't think it's utopian, really. What's funny is probably if you went back, you'd see a lot more people believing in these kinds of principles. And back then, everyone kind of looks back nostalgically on, the olden days. Back then, they were much more in for free markets and, civil liberties and whatever. I don't think it's utopian, really.
Well, that's good. I don't either. But there was an argument that I heard on the mainstream media that was saying, he's got these utopian views, like it'll never happen that way. The world just can't operate the way that he's saying it. And in truth, the world can most certainly operate the way that Dr. Paul talks about, at least, and at the very least, the United States. But how do you see Ron Paul being able, and this is hypothetical, he gets elected to the presidency. How can one man go about changing things if you have political gridlock in the legislative branch?
Well, I think what will happen is it's going to have to be gradualism. It's not going to, people on both sides of the aisle, they have their special goodies, The Democrats have whatever programs they want, universal daycare or whatever, and then the Republicans have farm subsidies or whatever. So, but what I think will happen probably is if he did get the presidency is that it would start to be chipped away in pieces. Like if you had a Democratic majority, he could agree with them maybe on stopping the war on drugs or cutting defense spending. And if he had a Republican majority, he could, he could work on scaling back social programs or cutting wasteful government. So maybe it's gonna. I think the thing about Ron Paul that people don't realize is even though they consider him a libertarian, a right wing nutball, the thing is he's a he's fiscally conservative and socially liberal. So there's great potential for bridging the gap on different subjects, and he could actually be someone who really brings people together on both sides. Instead of someone polarizing who just wants to be in line with the Republicans, or someone who's just trying to please whatever group is popular with the Democrats right now.
One of my regular guests on the show is 2004 presidential candidate Michael Badnarik. He ran as the Libertarian Party presidential candidate in 2004. And, he says, the left-right paradigm for people to think that it's two-dimensional they're sorely mistaken, because we don't live in a two-dimensional world. He says we live in a three-dimensional world. So, you have the left, and the left says, guys, you can have your abortions, you can do whatever you want, watch smut on TV, no problem, but give us your money because we know how to spend it for you. That's the left. And then you got the right, and the right says, no smut on TV and no abortions for you, but you can have more of your money because you know how to spend it better, Then you have down people, and down people are, we want your money and your rights. And that's pretty much despots, your tyrannical dictators, things like that. And what I come to like, and this is what I consider myself, and I don't know how you consider yourself, but I'm an up person, because in the end, I want my money and my rights. I want freedom. And with freedom comes personal responsibility, something that's sorely lacking today, but something that I can tell that your folks and you yourself have embraced. What do you feel, or how would you go about changing the way society thinks to become more personally responsible?
I think something that'll probably people are, even though some people don't like to admit it, people are basically they want to do what's best for them. And so I think that if people really understood like the economic case for personal responsibility, like statistics show, if you look at like poverty statistics, people who do things, and there are, of course, some people in poverty are really people who just had bad luck, but a lot of people in poverty have made decisions, single motherhood, or things that you can see economically why there's those kinds of problems. So if we can show people, being personally responsible, whatever you need to do to maintain economic well-being is also what's in line with personal responsibility. And that's almost why I think that we should have maybe a mandatory class on how money class in school or something, instead of maybe sexual education. Take that time and teach people how to manage money and the way that the economy works, because that's going to very, very much affect them in both their personal lives and their political lives.
You really touched something that's interesting. A lot of the public school mentality, it's cool to be stupid. It's cool to ride the wave. I truly believe that if that mentality didn't exist, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have now that we're facing in America. But I look back on history, and I look at the downfall of where we were to where we are now. A lot of that has to do with the breakdown of the family structure. I truly believe that when mom started to go to work and mom wasn't at home raising the kids, that there was, there's a breakdown there. What's your thoughts?
It's funny because one of the...
Oh, you know what, Dan? Let's take that after the break. I hear the bumper music and I lost track of time. So when we come back, we're going to get into the breakdown of the family structure. We got Dan on the show from EducatoriumEuphorium on YouTube. Subscribe to his channel if you can. Great stuff from Dan. And we'll be right back. About 3 minutes, folks. You're listening to Freedomlink Radio on the Orion Talk Radio Network.
Free speech guaranteed.